two is over. Moving on to better and bigger things. So, Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 2 p.m. on Wednesday, January the 10th.
A short legislative day following the stormy weather throughout Georgia. Atlanta's tornado warning this morning included the Gold Dome. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on day 2 of the Georgia legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. While it is still early for lawmakers to take action on bills, plans are in the works for new laws, and we'll learn more about a few of them tonight. First, imagine you are quietly going about your life at your home and a SWAT team shows up at your door. Unfortunately, some Georgia lawmakers don't have to imagine it, they have lived it. 2 of those lawmakers are joining us on the show to tell us about the terrifying experiences of swatting and how it affected their families. And we'll find out what they hope to do about the problem through legislation. Also, you may live in a community in Georgia facing a crisis when it comes to emergency medical services. Throughout the state, residents are dealing with a critical shortage of emergency medical technicians and long medical response times by ambulance services. 2 senators join us in the studio to talk about possible solutions. For now, let's get right down to the Capitol with our new Capitol correspondent, Sarah Callis.
Well, Donna, day 2 of the legislative session did not bring quite the same busy energy as day 1, but there was still some work to be done. The day started off with stormy weather at the Capitol, causing the House to push their floor session to the mid-afternoon. But the Senate met at their usual time, gavelled in.
The Senate will come to order. Day 2 is over. Moving on to better and bigger things.
And then quickly gavelled out. Also today, Speaker of the House Jon Burns released a video touting some of his and the House's accomplishments from last year and promoting what he hopes will continue during the session.
Hey Georgia, Speaker Jon Burns here. As we kick off 2024, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on 2023 and what a great year it was for the Georgia House of Representatives. Together, we accomplished a great deal for our state and its citizens, from improving education, strengthening public safety, and expanding access to health care, and returning more money to hard-working Georgia families, while our state was named the best state in the nation to do business in for the 10th straight year. We are going to build upon our successes in 2024, and I know that with the help of each and every member, we will continue to deliver meaningful results for this great state that we all are proud to call home. This House will continue to lead and champion policies to keep Georgia the best place to live, work, and raise a family. And I look forward to a great 2024 legislative session. Now, let's get to work.
In the House, members quickly finished business as well.
All those in favor will say aye. Oh yeah.
But before adjournment, Democrats called attention to jarring statistics about pregnancy-related deaths. Georgia is among the worst states for maternal mortality.
Among white women, the rate is 23.3 per 100,000 births. And horrifically, among black women, it is 48.6 per 100,000 births. We are leading the country in maternal mortality. So while we're leading the country in business development, we're failing the mothers in our state.
Several bills dealing with gun legislation were also filed. A bipartisan group of senators filed a bill to remove sales tax for gun safes. And some Democrats in the House filed a bill to ban people convicted of family violence from having firearms. The House convenes again tomorrow at 11 a.m., followed by the Senate at 2 p.m. That's all for my Capitol Report. Donna, back to you.
All right, thanks to Sarah Callis for that report. Now on to swatting. The word sounds innocent enough, maybe swatting a fly. But increasingly, it's the more sinister definition that's playing out at private homes. By definition, swatting is the action of making a false report of a serious emergency so that a SWAT team, which is a group of officers trained to deal with dangerous situations, will go to a person's home by someone who wants to frighten, upset, or cause problems for that person. That's who makes the call. In this studio are 2 lawmakers who've experienced swatting. In recent weeks, Democratic Senator Kimberly Jackson of Stone Mountain, and that is District 41, and Republican Senator John Albers of Roswell, who is also the chair of the Senate Public Safety Committee. So welcome to you both for being here. Let's get right into this because people don't really understand it. They hear the word. So I want you to each tell your stories. So we'll start with you. What happened?
Yeah, so we were at home on the day after Christmas. So my family is brand new, actually. We have a brand new 2-year-old little boy that we welcomed into our home. And so it was our first Christmas. Still had all the toys kind of strewn around the living room. And I heard the police knock, that kind of classic boom, boom, boom. And I looked at my wife. And we live on a farm, so everything is completely fenced in, so nobody knocks on our door. And that alerted me immediately that something was wrong. And I looked out the window and I saw all of these trooper cars in front, cruisers kind of pulled out. And so I go out, I knew what was happening. I knew we were being swatted. And so I go out with my hands up and I say, I'm State Senator Kim Jackson. We're being swatted. And I am greeted by 3 armed officers who have guns trained on me. And I don't think he quite heard what I was saying, but they were looking for a man because that had been the report. And so I think because I wasn't a man, he said, say that again. And I repeated, I'm Senator Kim Jackson. I've been swatted. Everybody's okay here. And thankfully, they're very quick to respond and to believe me. In fact, 2 of the officers believed me so quickly that they ran and jumped back over my fences before I could even open the gate. And the other officer stayed with me, and we worked out a report. And very grateful for the way in which law enforcement, DeKalb County in particular, both the chief of police and the sheriff both reached out to us immediately to make sure that we were okay and to assure us that there would be interventions in place in the future so that we could avoid this type of problem.
So you understood, but it was frightening. I'm still
it was terrifying. I mean, I've never had guns pointed at me before, and those were just the 3 that I could see, right? I'm clear that given the number of police cars there, that there were many more officers there who undoubtedly had guns trained and directed at our house. And so, yeah, it was very terrifying. And I left my little boy. He was in his room playing, but turns out, he heard the door too. And so when I left, he came and he was standing right behind me. And I'm just really, really grateful that because the officers heard me and responded really quickly, that before he could peek his little head out, there weren't guns still out. But yeah, it was very terrifying. And my wife didn't know what swatting was. And so I do have this, kind of fear in the back of my mind that if she had been the one who'd answered that door, it might have ended differently because she would not have known what to say. She would not have known to tell the officers, this is who we are and this is what's happening.
Wow. I want to turn to your story now. I can't imagine what happened with you.
Well, the day after Christmas as well.
Same day?
Same day. My wife and I had left that morning to go to Florida to visit some family, and my older son was watching our house and the dog. And a similar circumstance as Senator Jackson, all of a sudden it was pounding on the door, and a very large complement of public safety officials showed up, and they pulled him out and asked him very quickly, who's in this house with you? Of course, he said, well, the dog. Right? And he actually figured it out before anybody else did, having a background working for the GBI, and determined that we were being swatted. But the police, again, did just same as Senator Jackson, did a phenomenal job, the level of professionalism, but also taking the time to search the house, make sure everything was fine. Obviously, I was quickly on the phone with all of the chief of police and the responding officers. And since then, we've been working very diligently to try to prevent that, although on the 27th, it happened again.
Really?
So it happened back-to-back days. Only this time, it was a call to me and to my son, and they sent 1 officer over just to make sure everything was fine. And of course, not just us, Senator Dixon, Senator Kirkpatrick, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, and other officials had the same thing happen to them.
Yeah, so we've had, U.S. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. We've heard the Senator Warnock. This is becoming a thing. So the good thing is you kind of knew about it a little bit, but a lot of people don't, and it is very frightening. I do need to ask, why do you think you were targeted?
So I saw that Senator Dixon, who was my seatmate, had been swatted. He posted on Twitter, also known as X, and I reposted that and said, Senator Dixon is my friend and my colleague, my seatmate. This is horrible. Nobody deserves to be swatted. And literally 20 minutes later, the knock came on my door with the police officers there. So I'm very clear that it's because I associate it. No, I'm the only Democrat in the Senate who has been swatted, and I'm clear that it's related to me being able to say out loud, Senator Dixon is a friend, a colleague, and nobody deserves to be swatted, and so that was my repayment for choosing to be in a good relationship with my colleagues.
Wow. What about you? Why do you think you were targeted?
You know, it's a good question. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure. Being the chairman of public safety could certainly have something to do with that. However, you know, it is great to see us all working together, right? Because at the end of the day, candidly, we're not like Washington, D.C., right? We all get along together. We know each other personally. We work together professionally. And most of the things we do are really done when we're locking arms in arms together. And I was glad to see that everybody came out after this and said, we're going to do something about this. And I'm really proud of the work that the Georgia State Patrol, the GBI, our local and federal counterparts are doing to go after these people. This is a crime. This is not a prank. This could have put people's lives in danger, and we've got news for them. We're going to come after you both criminally and civilly to make sure you don't do this again.
Yeah, so get into that a little bit more. What are you doing? What at the Gold Dome can you do?
Well, I'm going to give a lot of credit to Senator Clint Dixon. He has already put together some draft legislation. We are working together with him, as well as Lieutenant Governor Jones in his office, to look at how we create increased penalties, how we make sure there's rights to civil action. This is really domestic terrorism at its worst. And we want to make sure that when we're going through this process, we're very thoughtful, but we have to hold people accountable for these crimes. Because you think about the first responders who are going in full emergency, right? They're putting their lives in danger, as well as the public. Certainly, the people who are at their house when this happens. So all of this, which sounds maybe funny to somebody who thinks this is a prank, is actually the exact opposite. It is criminal, it is life-threatening, and we're going to make sure we do everything possible to prevent that in the future.
Yeah, so when I was reading about it, I heard that it started as like a prank among people who were doing online things, like it was funny, but it's become really serious. It's a good thing your child is too young to remember this, but I know some of the others have had younger kids who could see what was going on. So yeah, something has to be done. You like the direction they're going in?
You know, I'm really grateful. We have a really incredible DA in DeKalb County, Sherry Boston, who has assured me that they will go after this person when they find them at the fullest extent of the existing laws that we have, because it's already happened, right? And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for also the way in which everybody's kind of come together and said, we're going to call this out. It's not funny. It's a waste of resources. You know, in a few minutes, you're going to talk about ambulance responses. Yeah. They set up EMS was set up just down the street waiting because they thought that there was somebody in my house who needed emergency medical equipment. And so that's somebody else's house that they weren't able to go to, somebody who was actually having a heart attack or who had an emergency. And so I'm glad to see that we're really taking this very seriously and that we're sending a message to whoever it is that's choosing to terrorize us. Thank you for using that language, Senator, because it was terrorizing. My family, we chose to leave our house for the next couple of days because it was terrifying. And so to see folks gather around and say, we're going to take this seriously, we're going to send a clear message, this is not acceptable, and it's not fair to our law enforcement officers or to our EMTs to waste their resources in this way.
Yeah. And apparently when they're calling, they're saying that somebody is a hostage or somebody could be hurt, right?
It is the same person that did it to all of us. I've been working with our law enforcement officials. And it's the same story every time, although sometimes he calls himself different names. But it's the same type of a scenario. And you know, commenting further on what Senator Jackson said, all those resources are in one place. Right? Well, if the other side of town or the other side of a county, all of a sudden we had a bad car accident, we had a medical emergency, we had a house on fire, we had someplace being robbed, they are not able to respond, right? And we have limited resources. It's hard enough to attract people to take these roles as first responders today. We don't need to send them any wild goose chases. We need to make sure we're using them for the talent that they have for the right need.
Yeah, I know it's important for us to tell people about it, but is there a fear that when we talk about it, it is going to, you know, we're going to see some copycats, maybe?
Well, so I will say I had another instance about four months ago that happened at my house that was clearly also designed to terrify us. And my wife and I made a decision not to go public about it. We called DeKalb County. They responded appropriately. The police, we got all the resources we needed. But we never went public because we didn't want to bring attention. We were afraid that if we brought attention, more stuff would happen to us. This time, I'm speaking out. I'm telling the story that this happened because clearly being silent doesn't make a difference. And so we're hoping that by joining together with our colleagues and saying, no, this is happening, it's unacceptable, we don't want this to be the new normal for what it is to be in office. I'm hoping that speaking out will actually bring about change this time.
Yeah, and the fear is that something really terrible is going to happen. Somebody is going to get hurt. Somebody is going to die if this goes any further.
Well, that's why we need to talk about this time, right? I've had everything from 500 leaflets on my front yard on a Saturday morning to death threats. And you serve in office long enough, and unfortunately, there are crazy people on all sides of the political spectrum. However, we need to make sure that we're talking about this so people hold other folks accountable, whether it be friends, neighbors, family members. You need to talk about these things because sometimes people may not know the difference even though they should.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that other jurisdictions, law enforcement jurisdictions, find out about it, and so maybe they are a little cautious, more cautious when they go in.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, one of the things that we did is I implored each senator to make sure that they've called their 911 center, made sure that they build what's called the CAD system, which is the dispatch system, that they know it's their house. They have a cell phone number on file, so they can hopefully, if something like this comes in, get to the bottom of it quickly.
Oh, okay then. Well, I appreciate you both coming on the show and talking about this.
Thank you.
It's frightening. People need to know about it, and maybe we'll have you come back as the legislation goes forward, and we'll see what happens. So, we'll see. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it
very much.
So, thank you to these two senators. We have two more senators coming up. We're going to talk about another safety issue, what some are calling a crisis when it comes to emergency response times for ambulances. You're watching Lawmakers on GPB.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
People put their faith in PBS because they know that it is constantly delivering quality. It covers the whole of the United States. It's a free and independent media.
We go where the viewers are.
What are the conversations that are happening right now?
We feel that civil discourse is a civic responsibility.
What we do is authentic reporting that people can trust.
We give time so you can hear voices on all sides of an issue.
This is the place that people turn to for stories that matter.
And they know that when they walk away, they will have learned something about the world around them.
That's why this makes PBS important for daily life and, in the end, our world.
Thank you for joining us.
Community. Learning, working, playing, celebrating, doing life is always better together. At GPB, we aim to provide you with the tools to be able to do life together well. Our mission to educate, inform, and entertain inspires everything from our wide range of programming to our stimulating radio conversations to our fun in-person events. We've got something for everyone. Visit gpb.org/community to learn more about our upcoming events.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. Emergencies happen without warning at any time. They can involve health issues like a heart attack or a stroke, car crashes, drownings, shootings, drug overdoses. There's so much more. Joining me are senators concerned with ambulance response times. First, Republican Senator Rick Williams of Milledgeville, chairman of the Senate Retirement Committee, And also here is Democrat Derek Mallow of Savannah, District 2. Thanks for being here, both of you. Welcome. We talked, actually you were referred to this conversation about ambulances in the previous segment. So I want to start with talking with each one of you about personal stories you have dealing with ambulances. And I'm going to start with you, Chairman Williams.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thank you very much. Started off on a normal afternoon, and all of a sudden the elephant sat on my chest. I was with my wife and a couple of grandsons, and I drove them home, and I drove myself to the hospital. And I got there about 4 o'clock, and I walked into the emergency room. They took me right in, started IVs, hooked me up for EKG, blood pressure. My blood pressure was very elevated. And anyway, they started treating me and drawing blood. So this went on until finally got into a room about 10 o'clock that night. The next morning, that was on Friday, the next morning, about 9:30, they came in and said, you need to go to Macon, you need a heart cath.
You were in Milledgeville.
I was in Milledgeville at a hospital. I told them, okay, let's do it. They said, we're gonna call an ambulance. Okay. Well, time went on. 1 o'clock that afternoon, I still had no ambulance.
And you were at home at that point?
I was in Milledgeville.
You were in Milledgeville at the hospital?
At the hospital.
But no ambulance still?
No ambulance. And so the ambulance service to move from Atrium Baldwin in Milledgeville to carry me to Macon goes through a transfer center in Macon. They could not get an ETA from 10 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Still could not give an ETA on what time they could have an ambulance there to transfer me. So I was preparing to have my wife drive me to Macon. I knew what the results would be if I did not go ahead and get to elevated care. So the doctors tried to talk me out of it, and then it just hit me that we're actually members of Air Evac. And so I called the paramedic that I know.
You called the paramedic?
I called the paramedic from my hospital bed with a heart monitor on, telling him, I need a helicopter. I need to be flown to Macon. I've been waiting since 10 o'clock this morning for an ambulance. And he told me, tell the doctor to call Air Evac. Well, I turned to the doctor and said, call Air Evac. He said, we don't know how. This is on the 4th floor of the hospital. So I put my phone onto speaker. The paramedic told the doctor what number to dial, what to do. Within 10 minutes, a helicopter was there at the hospital to get me. They came to the room, took me down, put me in the helicopter. 14 minutes later, I was in Macon. So time was going on. This was getting to be late Saturday afternoon. But thankfully, the cardiologist was leaving one hospital, coming to the one that I was in, and wanted to know if I wanted to go ahead with the heart cath. And I said, by all means. So 6 o'clock, they rolled me in. I had a 98% blockage of my widowmaker, and 7:30 I was back in the room. 10 o'clock Sunday morning, I was dismissed from the hospital.
Wow.
Close call.
And if you hadn't had the resources, if you hadn't known who to call, you may not be here right now.
I may not be here. I probably would not be here. I know from my own experience as an EMT of providing ambulance service in the past, what happens.
Yeah.
They'll do CPR 15, 20 minutes. They'll shock you 5 or 6 times, and that's it.
Wow.
It took that heart cath and that stent to save my life.
I'm so glad you knew what to do.
Thank you.
Let's hear your story now. What happened?
I was playing kickball Sunday afternoon in Savannah, and I experienced a medical emergency, and I collapsed on the field. And I was out for however long. Many folks called 911. They struggled getting through to 911. There was apparently a shooting that happened at the same time that I had my emergency that took a lot of resources. and no one could get through the 911. Finally, the off-duty officer called dispatch. He called the EMS dispatch, and they said, well, we got one 911 call that said, don't dispatch an ambulance. And he said, well, you should have still rolled, an ambulance. And so they dispatched an ambulance, but they also called the fire department. And the fire department still beat the ambulance to the field where I was at. And when the fire department got there, I was laying on the ground. They put the oxygen meter on my hand. My O2 stats were at 90, 85, 79. I was bottoming out. And they said, go get him oxygen right now. And so when EMS gets there, the fire department has already got me on oxygen. They're saying, hey, you want us to get him in? They get me in. I can't remember. I'm having symptoms. I can't, talk. And so just experienced this medical blackout. And then I get to the emergency room, and I'm on the wall with the EMTs I came with. And I sat on the wall probably 2 hours that day.
Before anybody saw you?
Yep, 2 hours. It was me and the EMTs. And I couldn't think of what to tell them that, hey, to get my phone, I need to call somebody. I couldn't think of what to say. I just couldn't verbalize it.
You're in the middle of a medical emergency.
I went through the entire process, and I thought to myself, after I'd sat in there, I said, if something was wrong and you're going to do lab tests to figure out what it was, it's gone now. Yeah. So I don't know what my medical emergency was, because the time that I spent before I even got to an MRI, EKG machine, all of that is gone. Because when those episodes happen, you have a timeline that you can find. If I had a stroke, you would find these symptoms. If I had a pen stroke or whatever it was, you'd have been able to find it the quicker I got the treatment. And that didn't happen.
We're glad you're here too. I appreciate that. So we don't have a lot of time, but I need you to talk about where the problem is. Is it the problem with, where is the problem?
The problem is getting employees and paramedics and EMTs, and especially rural Georgia. I want to accentuate and talk about Hancock County, the poorest county in the state of Georgia. The chairman of the county commissioners, Sisti Hudson, has led and went to ACCG. They got a loan. They bought 4 ambulances. And now they have implemented a EMT tax of $50 on every parcel of property practically in that county. So that's going to be paying for their EMTs. So now they actually have 2 ambulances running all the time, and they have 2 on backup. We've got to look at the requirements of a driver. When you're transporting, and I talked to a former county manager today, and he told me, look, as a county, we're going to provide ambulance service to get the patient to the hospital. But we're
ambulance, so you need somebody to show up. And if I have more hearses in my community than I have ambulances, that's a problem for me. Yeah. And I shouldn't have more hearses at the funeral home than I do ambulances roaming my community.
Okay, we've got less than a minute. We've got legislation that you guys are possibly looking at that I may have to have you come back to talk about. Is that true?
Yes.
Something down the pike that we're going to have you come back to talk about, huh?
Yes.
All right, then. Well, I appreciate you both coming here. I know these are difficult stories to tell, but they're important, and we're glad that you're able to talk about them a little bit. This is a top priority for you?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
This could mean the difference between life and death to a lot of innocent people.
Yeah.
We've got to do something.
Yeah, and I know it is for you, too. We talked at the Wild Hog Supper about that kind of thing. How long ago was your incident?
3 months ago.
Just 3 months ago. And yours?
November the 3rd.
Wow. So really, really recent. Well,
very recent.
I'm glad you're both here. Thank you so much. All right, that does it for Lawmakers for this evening. We appreciate both of you coming on the show. We've talked about 2 really great topics. We'll be back tomorrow, and that is day 3 of the Georgia legislative session. In the meantime, have a good night.